শুভেচ্ছা দর্শক, আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি চ্যানেল 24 এর নিয়মিত আয়োজন প্ল্যানেটারি হেলথ একাডেমিয়া সুরক্ষায় প্রতিদিন অনুষ্ঠানে পাওয়ার বেনেটেড হসপিটাল। দর্শক, আজকে একটি বিশেষ আয়োজন। আমরা কথা বলবো মানব মস্তিষ্ক নিয়ে। যদি প্রশ্ন করা হয় মানুষের শরীরের সবচেয়ে গুরুত্বপূর্ণ অঙ্গ কী, তাহলে নিশ্চয়ই মস্তিষ্ক বা ব্রেইনের নাম সবার আগে আসবে। এই মস্তিষ্ক কেবল আমাদের নিজেদের নিয়ন্ত্রণই করছে না, বরং বলা যেতে পারে আমাদের সকল প্রাণী জগতে অন্যান্য প্রাণীর উপরে বুদ্ধিমত্তায় যে শ্রেষ্ঠত্ব, সেটিও আমাদেরকে দিয়েছে এই মস্তিষ্ক। আমরা জানার চেষ্টা করব মানব মস্তিষ্কের ভবিষ্যৎ বিষয়, এবং এ বিষয়ে কথা বলার জন্য এমন একজন বিজ্ঞানীকে আমাদের সাথে যুক্ত করেছি যিনি সারা পৃথিবীতে স্বনামে পরিচিত এবং মানব মস্তিষ্ক নিয়ে কেবল গবেষণাই করছেন না, বরং মানব মস্তিষ্কের সাথে আমাদের কম্পিউটারের সংযোগ ঘটিয়ে কীভাবে কৃত্রিম বুদ্ধিমত্তার উন্নয়ন সাধন করা যায় সেখানেও কাজ করছেন। এবং তার গবেষণার মূল উদ্দেশ্য আমাদের মস্তিষ্কে যে বিভিন্ন রোগ ব্যাধি আছে সেখানে উন্নয়ন সাধন করা। আমরা আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি আমাদের সাথে যুক্ত হওয়ার জন্য অধ্যাপক ডক্টর নিউটন হাওয়ার্ডকে। প্রফেসর ডক্টর নিউটন হাওয়ার্ড তিনি কম্পিউটেশনাল নিউরোসায়েন্স এবং নিউরোসার্জারি বিভাগের আছেন অক্সফোর্ড বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়। এছাড়া তিনি যুক্তরাষ্ট্রের জর্জ টাউন বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ে আছেন। তার আরও বেশ কয়েকটি পরিচয় আছে, আমি সংক্ষেপে সেগুলো আপনাদেরকে জানিয়ে দিচ্ছি। তিনি চেয়ারম্যান ব্রেইন সায়েন্সেস ফাউন্ডেশন, ডিরেক্টর সিনথেটিক ইন্টেলিজেন্স ল্যাবরেটরি MIT, তিনি ফাউন্ডার মাইন্ড মেশিন প্রজেক্ট MIT, এবং তিনি অনেকগুলো আন্তর্জাতিক জার্নালের সাথে যুক্ত। এবং তার আরেকটি পরিচয় আছে, তিনি ফাউন্ডার অ্যান্ড চেয়ারম্যান সেন্টার ফর অ্যাডভান্সড ডিফেন্স স্টাডিজ। অধ্যাপক নিউটন হাওয়ার্ড, যেটি আমরা বুঝতে পারছি অনেকগুলো কার্যক্রমের সাথে যুক্ত, কিন্তু সব কিছু ছাপিয়ে তিনি মস্তিষ্কের গবেষণায় অগ্রগণ্য ভূমিকা রাখছেন। প্রফেসর নিউটন হাওয়ার্ড, ওয়েলকাম টু আওয়ার প্রোগ্রাম।
It's a pleasure to be on your program, and it's a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to get you here on this program, and it's an amazing opportunity for me and also for the audience to learn about brain, because as I have already told that you are actively involved with brain research among other things. So the very first question to you will be, what's the speciality of human brain and why it is so important to us?
Human brain is considered the most intelligent and sophisticated organism on Earth, and it is essentially the seat of conscience and the processor for lower and higher function sensation, things like senses of touch, smell, sight, emotion, among few things to name.
Okay, thank you so much for introducing human brain. And the next question will be, I have introduced you with the audience, and I have given quite a few designations that you have. But among other things, it's understandable that you are mostly involved in brain research. What was the motivation behind this? Why you were so interested in human brain research?
When I started my career, I started as a government scientist and officer in the U.S. military, and I worked on modeling apparatus like intent, volition, so basically the production out of the brain. That work led into a lot of areas in natural language processing and linguistic affect, and areas that kind of serve the government needs. Later on, I encountered a TBI myself, and from this traumatic brain injury, I learned that the corrections that needs to happen has to happen in brain health and on the brain directly. So I started dedicating the most of my remaining life or time in research to focus on this biological processor that produces all this different faculty and things that we enjoy. Sometimes we don't enjoy if we are actually suffering from brain injuries of some sort.
Okay, we really hope that the research that you are engaged in will bring some substantial development and will help us to understand the brain and also solve some of the critical problems of brain diseases. We'll learn about that later in the interview. But before that, I would like to know the speciality of human brain. If we consider it or compare it with other animals, there are other larger animals. For if we consider elephant, it's definitely bigger than us. But we are obviously, from the point of view of intelligence, we are in a greater positions compared to elephant. So why and how the human brain is different than other animals' brain, and what are the rules of evolutions in the process?
So the human brain fundamentally differs from animal brain in the structural, functional, and the behavioral output. For example, if we look at the structural, we look at the sense of smell, olfactory function or bulbs in the human brain are much smaller in comparing to animals. When we look at this from a rule of evolution, the need for actually using that sense to hunt, if you will, or to establish a sensation of balance when faced with fear, over time sort of diminished, but not in animal. Another example that we find in nature is in navigation. Pigeons, for example, are equipped to have the ability to respond to magnetic stimulus. That's very significant and unique feature in our human evolution and in our comparison to our animal brain. Other comparison is when you look at in the learning space, children are endowed with an amazing memory and photographic memory, when it's compared to other human and adults, quality, that selection feature was kind of front-loaded as opposed to coming later in life. Some people retain it and maintains that equilibrium forward, or some people actually have memory issues and they basically go into a basic processing skill. Other things like brain size, the glial cells, and corticogenesis or neurogenesis, the ability to regenerate cells and the speed of that regeneration between us and animals are significantly different. So structurally, we made out of basically a cerebrum, which is the most evolutionary evolved components of the brain structure, and then you have the cerebellum, and then you have the brain stem. In the cerebrum, we have a lot of functionality and specialization and functional purposes that go beyond what used to be known as left and right hemisphere localization. In the animal brain, you have the very basic mammalian brain for the processing of information like stimulus from sense, from the environment and whatnot, but it's not capable of higher functions like language, speech, calculating numbers, things like that. So.
Okay, so there are fundamental differences, and definitely we can conclude from your statement that human brains in certain areas have developed quite a lot. And do you also believe that this process of development is a continuous process, and in the future we can find even more progress into the areas that we have already identified?
Absolutely. The brain knowledge have evolved to a corpora that is substantial, yet is still a fraction of what we should know about the brain.
Okay.
And it dates all the way to Aristotle, Herophilus, and the old Roman and Greek time. So it's thousands of years of investigation, and it was thought to actually originally understood by learning dissection. So dissection is the oldest method for us to kind of have gone into the brain and trying to understand it. And over time, you added technologies like imageries, you got PET scan, MRI, fMRI, EEG, etc. So there's still a corpora of knowledge that has not been yet discovered, and areas that we don't quite understand how it really works. We guesstimate that work, but we don't really know.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Newton Howard. I will very briefly try to translate what you have said so far in Bengali to communicate with our audience. দর্শক, আমরা নিউটন হাওয়ার্ডের সাথে ব্রেইনের যে মৌলিক বিষয়গুলো সেগুলো নিয়ে কথা বলছিলাম। তিনি তার যে আলোচনায় এখন পর্যন্ত বলেছেন যে মানব মস্তিষ্ক সেটি অন্যান্য প্রাণীর তুলনায় কীভাবে আলাদা, বিশেষ করে যেভাবে মস্তিষ্ক কাজ করে এবং তার যে গঠনগত দিক সেই জায়গাগুলোতে কিন্তু মানব মস্তিষ্ক অন্যান্য প্রাণীর তুলনায় ভিন্ন। এবং তিনি এটাও বলেছেন যে মানব মস্তিষ্কের যে কার্যক্রম কর্মকাণ্ড সেটি সম্বন্ধে আমরা খুব অল্পই এখনো পর্যন্ত জানি। আমাদের যে টেকনোলজির যে প্রযুক্তি আছে সেটি তিনি কয়েকটি উদাহরণ দিয়েছেন, আপনারা অনেকেই সেগুলোর কথা কিছু জানেন। আমাদের যে বিভিন্ন রোগ ব্যাধির শনাক্তকরণও সেগুলো ব্যবহার করা হয়। সেই প্রযুক্তিগুলো ব্যবহার করে আমরা মস্তিষ্কের কিছু কার্যক্রম জানতে পারছি, কিন্তু আরও অনেক কিছু আমাদের অজানা আছে, সেই বিষয়টি তিনি তুলে ধরেছেন। প্রফেসর নিউটন হাওয়ার্ড, I want to come back to you again. Briefly, we will come back to this point again, but briefly I want to learn also about your own research. What are the areas where you are mostly engaged in at this moment regarding brain research?
So I'm interested in the interfacing of the human brain with the machine or with the microprocessor to both elicit knowledge from the brain and to feed instruction to the brain. That breaks it into two categories. One we refer to as the BCI, or brain-computer interface, which generally these are interfaces that has minimum invasion, like for installation process, it's minimally invasive. And the second category is known as DBS, or deep brain stimulations. And deep brain stimulation represented by DBS stimulators that are generally pulse generator and not a full microprocessor that does two-way communication. So I've been working on chipsets that allows us two-way communication with the intelligence of a microprocessor interfacing directly with the brain, with the neurons, interrogating instruction, and then giving feedback and instructions as well to correct functional damage, structural damage, or behavioral output that needs to be corrected.
Okay, thank you so much. We learn a bit more about your own research. We want to learn more about this, and especially what are the areas where your research is going to contribute, and how your research is going to solve some of the long-lasting problems that we are suffering from regarding human diseases.
So the area of research that we're focusing on right now from an applied point is to actually correct neurodegenerative disorders and address issues like Parkinson and Alzheimer. You see, Parkinson is a damage to the vesicle areas that secrete dopamine in areas like the subthalamic nucleus or basal ganglia area of the brain. The current treatment is medications that don't really work for a long time or correct the disorder. They just to manage, if you will. The second line of defense and the last line of defense is to use deep brain stimulations, or deep brain stimulators, which functions as a functional device that allows restoration of some of these problems. What we did is to minimize the size of that device so that the surgical technique is done through craniofacial methodology and not cutting the skull, and being able to actually get effectiveness immediately from this treatment, literally on the surgery table.
Okay. There are also some other initiatives which are going on around the world, especially there is another company called Neuralink, and obviously Elon Musk is behind this company, and also other initiatives. So how your research is different than, for example, the initiatives of Neuralink, and why do you think that your approach will serve better for the interest of the patients?
We started the research in this area approximately 18, almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And led us to have advancements and understanding that exceeds maybe some of these competitors. But the real differentiator is that we are deep cortical device, not a subcortical device, meaning we don't install the connectors on just the surface of the cortex, but actually go down to the area of atrophy and cause about the deeper connection and stimulation that is needed. We're also able to read and write 1 million neuron. Most of our competitive devices are in the tens of thousands of even that. There are other differentiating factors also, like the size. Our size of our device is approximately 2.2 by 1.2 millimeter, while others is about the size of a stack of coins or something substantially large that you have to drill a hole and you have to cut through the skull to bring about effectiveness.
Okay, thank you so much. Nitin, if you permit, I will also like to translate some of your statements again in Bengali for the convenience of our audience. দর্শক, প্রফেসর নিউটন হাওয়ার্ড যে গবেষণাটির সাথে যুক্ত আছেন সেটি মানব মস্তিষ্কের অনেক দীর্ঘদিনের যেই রোগ ব্যাধি তার মধ্যে অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ পার্কিনসন্স, হান্টিংটন এবং আলঝাইমার ডিজিজ যেগুলো আছে, এই ধরনের অসুখের বিরুদ্ধে আমাদেরকে আরও বেশি সক্ষম করছে। এবং তিনি কয়েকটি টেকনোলজির কথা বলেছেন। একটি হচ্ছে ডিপ ব্রেইন স্টিমুলেশন, যেটি আমাদের মস্তিষ্কের গভীরে একটি ছোট্ট ডিভাইস ইনস্টল করার মাধ্যমে তিনি এই অসুখ বিসুখগুলো সমাধান করার চেষ্টা করছেন। এবং আমি প্রশ্ন করেছিলাম যে এলন মাস্কের যে প্রতিষ্ঠান আছে নিউরালিঙ্ক এবং এর বাইরেও অনেকগুলো প্রতিষ্ঠান আছে যারা কাজ করছে একই এরিয়াতে, তার তুলনায় কেন তার গবেষণা তুলনামূলকভাবে শ্রেষ্ঠতর। তিনি বেশ কয়েকটি পয়েন্ট বলেছেন, তার মধ্যে অন্যতম গুরুত্বপূর্ণ হচ্ছে তার যে প্রযুক্তি সেটি অনেক দীর্ঘদিনের গবেষণার ফল এবং তিনি অনেক সূক্ষ্ম লেভেলে কাজ করতে পারেন, অনেক ছোট ডিভাইস নিয়ে কাজ করতে পারেন, যেটি অন্যান্য যারা কাজ করছে তাদের তুলনায় আলাদা। Professor Newton Howard, I'm coming back to you again. So regarding the progress that you have made, I know some of the devices that you have already created. I have seen them in person. What's your projections regarding the widespread utilizations of these devices in the clinic? How general people are going to get benefits of this research and the devices that you have created?
So one of the devices that we have, which is the TQE, that's the BCI, that's the brain-computer interface device, the non-invasive one, is going through clinical trials right now. We are in the very, very early phases of these trials. We expect some corrections and some improvement to come along through this testing phase. We estimate that that would take us approximately 6 months to a year, and it's tuned for approximately 11 different conditions. As for the QE chip itself, that's a longer range, longer arm to get to market. We estimate that approximately 2 years out. I know that some of the claims of places like Neuralink and whatnot, that it's 6 months, and that's, you know, essentially yet to be backed by any kind of scientific evidence or data that supports that that's the case and it's going to be safe and working really well in human.
Okay, thank you so much. And we're really looking forward to the success of your research and also other research going on in this area, because people really need help in this to solve these problems as soon as possible. I want to come back to you to the darker side. There is obviously concerns among people that these interventions that we are making in brain using artificial intelligence or the devices that you are talking about, they may have some adverse impact and some unknown impact. In your statement at one point you said that there are lots of things that we don't know about brain. So with the limited knowledge that we have regarding brain, how we are going to address those negative, prospective negative impacts that we may face from the research and from the interactions of these devices with human brain?
So it's really important to realize that the value has to be built around restoring human dignity.
Yep.
The value cannot be around brain augmentation for the sake of brain augmentation, or else this becomes another, psychedelic drugs that people are doing to improve something that they don't like or whatever, at the rate that they do not understand. It has to be focused around treatment. And the ethics of it has to be around the restoration of human dignity, and then giving people back the faculty that are being taken away from them through years of evolution, bad diet, dialectic misfolding of protein, and many other causalities that led to where we're at. That's never going to stop a bad guy or a bad person or a bad actor from using the technology for the wrong use and directing it for the wrong purpose. Certainly, we know in our company at NITO that we built all this kind of safeguard mechanisms to enforce that the ethical boundaries of the technology is maintained intact, that the security, privacy issues are well in check, and that the purpose that it's created for, it ensures basically that it's going to be used for the purpose that it was created for.
Okay. So if I get the message correctly, and obviously for the confidence of the audience, we can say that it is absolutely necessary that there should be a check and balance, and there shouldn't be any rush if we want to, when we are doing research in the brain and we are especially implanting anything to enhance the human augmentation or something. That's your view, I guess.
Yes.
There shouldn't.
Yes.
So when we hear, especially in popular media, sometimes that, well, so and so company has created something that is going to augment human intelligence or enhance human cognition within like few years, or there is already significant progress in that area. How do you want us to perceive the news as general people? Are we really that close, or it's just a hype of the popular media, and we really have to wait for significant time to go there?
You know, the hype that revolves around the work in the brain, it spread from the pharmaceutical agents all the way to the electroceutical devices. So whenever somebody, if you take, for example, the widespread and legalization for something like THC and other psychoactive drugs, it's becoming legal, and they make outrageous claims about it enhancing human cognition and giving the person super cognitive capacity and make them sleep better or make them this and that. A lot of these things are founded on economic gains, pressure, people discovering an opportunity and a niche to drive fast economic gains, and they go after it, and they go after it forcefully to discover, 10, 20 years, 30 years later, that we created a monster. The same applies here. If we are treating Parkinson, Alzheimer, Huntington, MS, ALS, all those different disorders, they're here with us, and they significantly cause damage to society in billions, if not trillions of dollars globally. So we corrected with the intention of restoring something that was lost. That's completely and vastly different than chasing a wild dream, or someone who is, mounting a race for economic gains. There's a lot of efforts to put these type of controls, but they are not synchronized or coherent, if you will. I think one of the checks and balances comes from the process of the FDA. The US FDA has a very rigid approach and very stringent process in place to ensure that brain devices and medical pharmaceutical offering is well tested and well validated before it hits the hands of people. But from a reality point, there exists a class of these technologies and a class of this pharmaceutical offering that is already out there today on the market. Yeah, you don't have to wait for months for it. You don't have to wait for years for it. It's right there. Whether it's correct, accurate, and efficacy is solid, that's another separate whole can of worms.
Okay, thank you, Professor Newton Howard, for your valuable comment. আমরা কথা বলছি প্রখ্যাত গবেষক নিউটন হাওয়ার্ডের সাথে। তিনি এতক্ষণ পর্যন্ত খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ একটি মন্তব্য করেছেন। আমরা মস্তিষ্ক সংক্রান্ত যেসব খবরাখবর বিভিন্ন পত্রপত্রিকায় দেখি, তার ভেতরে অনেকখানি বলেছেন যে অর্থনৈতিক স্বার্থ সেটি অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। তার মতে আমাদের মস্তিষ্ক সংক্রান্ত গবেষণায় সবচেয়ে গুরুত্ব পাওয়া উচিত এই সংক্রান্ত যে অসুখ বিসুখ আছে, যেমন পার্কিনসন্সের কথা বলেছেন, আলঝেইমারের কথা বলেছেন, এই অসুখগুলো আমরা কিভাবে মোকাবেলা করতে পারি সেখানে আমাদের বেশি গুরুত্ব দেওয়া উচিত। এবং সেই তুলনায় যেখানে আমরা বর্তমানে দেখতে পাচ্ছি মানুষের বুদ্ধিমত্তা কিভাবে বাড়ানো হবে অথবা মানুষকে কিভাবে কম্পিউটারের সাথে যুক্ত করা হবে, এই তুলনায় তিনি রোগব্যাধির সাথে আমাদের যে যুদ্ধ সেখানে আমরা কিভাবে গবেষণার মাধ্যমে আরও সক্ষমতা অর্জন করতে পারি সেখানে গুরুত্ব দিতে বলেছেন। Professor Newton Howard, welcome back to our program again. I want to come back to some aspects of artificial intelligence. You are working with brain-computer interface. Artificial intelligence is somehow related to it and also in some way separate. So what's your view about AI, which is artificial intelligence, and how do you see our future when we are interacting as human being with AI?
My views on AI is that it's a more advanced set of tools and programming than the classical computer science use, if you will. That when it's deployed, if it's deployed for the right cause, even if the right cause sometimes can lead to a reduction of labor force in a particular class, it will also give back to that same class the ability to reclaim the time and re-equip themselves to get into the labor force on a stronger plateau than that they were in. For example, if you look at the standard bus when you're driving on the highway in the US or in other places, it used to be manned by an individual. It used to be manned by a person hand you a ticket, blah, 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 and then you go through this process. With the introduction of modern computation, information systems, and some of the automation that went into that area, you found little human involvement, and the whole process is automated. What happened to that human? Well, that human basically is being reclaimed to gain back time that they can repurpose to equip themselves and do something a little bit more important, a little bit more significant. Not that the work that they were doing before is not significant, but based on the time box or the time envelope or the time domain that they're in, it can be enhanced. And you never know from among that group of individuals who had not the opportunity before, there will come the future doctors, lawyers, professional practitioners, including computer scientists, including AIs, from that toolbox that was basically hindering their ability to grow.
Okay. But do you think that AI can be a threat to human existence at some point? Because there are some people who are genuinely concerned that the artificial intelligence can be even more intelligent than human being. Do you see similar? Do you have similar views on this matter?
It's already more intelligent than human beings.
Okay.
It's already more capable. An AI focused system is capable of doing things in that specialty better than a human actor, a human performer. It doesn't mean that, like some of the hoax that were in the news recently, is going to call a lawyer and retain a lawyer to defend itself against Google or take an action. The work of volition and will is a feature of human, not a machine, not an animal.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, you have to look at it from this perspective. The also other perspective, I always say, if you are afraid of AI, unplug the cable. The life of it is not an electron.
Okay, that's a good suggestions, but some people are genuinely concerned that AI probably will also prevent us from unplugging the cable, and obviously there are sci-fi movies and most of the general concerns are originating from there. But it's good to get your scientific view about this matter, and obviously we want to remain hopeful that AI will be for the betterment of human existence and human civilizations, not for the destruction of it. So that
absolutely, and having an ethics module on the top of any AI that we write or author, it creates a checks and balance, right? So if the system is created to do X, but is behaving erratic and is exceeding outside of the domain that is written for, so a flag would suggest right away that we need to shut it down or whatnot. Toyota had experiments in that space. Other automakers that actually experienced certain behaviors that came out of AI that suggested really quickly a re-examination of the entire program. I work on a couple of projects in addition to what we're doing for the coding of the chip that looks at some core AI features and functions and NLP, natural language processing functions and features as well. And I don't see the threat from AI. I see the threat coming from human capacity and intelligence diminishing over time because of the way and different various lifestyles and lack of attention to our brain health that come with our modern day lifestyles.
Thank you so much. And on this point, I think it's very relevant to ask you the very important questions. Considering everything that we have achieved regarding technology and the changes that we have got in our lifestyles, the sedentary lifestyles that is most of the cases blamed for a lot of the diseases that we have, what's your suggestions to keep our brain active and functional, considering everything that we already have and we are going to have in the future?
Well, from a very basic level, we are what we eat, we are what we process, we are what we sense. So what you watch in the media is going to actually impact on your brain cognition, is going to be imprinted in your memory, in your hippocampal space, is going to be something that affects how you process language, how you process images, how you process views. What we eat, we are what we eat. If all what we eat is unhealthy fat rather than the healthy fat which is needed for the brain, if all what we eating is carbs and sugar and the worst form of them, when that goes also to impact our getting people into diabetic state and affect the brain as well. Blood pressure affects the basal ganglia area and causes severe damage, like Alzheimer can actually emerge from some of that, or at least that's one of the theoretical causality. So it's examining our lifestyle and realizing that the brain is an organ that is involved in the processing of these other inputs that are coming in, your food, your media, your social interaction, the blizzards of information, useful and sometimes not so useful, that comes to your brain, and that we have to be sensible in making sure that it's not bombarded with things that are not good for it, if you will.
Okay, so thank you for the advice, and hopefully the audience that were listening today, they will keep that in their mind. We're at the end of the program, but I would like to finish the program with the very special questions. You have visited Bangladesh once, and you also worked with a very renowned Bangladeshi neuroscientist, neurosurgeon, Professor Tipu Aziz from Oxford University. So is there any future prospect of collaborations or other sorts of research interest that you can explore here in Bangladesh or with Bangladeshi scientists? What's your view about this future prospect?
Absolutely. I have came to Bangladesh actually more than 3 times already.
Okay.
And we do have a project where we are looking at doing surgeries for people who cannot reach the cost for hospitals or whatnot. So providing equipment and supply with some other local neurosurgeons. And I'm not privy to all the details of that program, but it is ongoing. And it was only affected because of the health of Tibu. Our prayers with him and his family to get well soon.
We also pray for the same for Professor Tipu Aziz. The very last question to you, Professor Newton Howard, that is, you are not only an active researcher, but also you are a philanthropist. You are actively involved with several social activities. You are helping people around the world. So how your foundations, which is Howard Brain Sciences Foundations, how it is helping research and also helping other people in the area of brain research or for other purposes?
We generally sponsor programs in, as it relates to brain research. We sponsor programs in patient advocacies, finding help for a person that feels that they couldn't get really the right answer, if you will. We sponsor joint research activities with universities around the world that focuses on advancement of brain tech or just pure fundamental science. So it's depending on the merit of the proposal, we approve an average of up to 100,000, sometime greater than that in grant money and whatnot to pick up a particular program.
Thank you, and we really are grateful for all the supports that you are providing around the world through your foundations and other philanthropic activities. Professor Newton Howard, we are really grateful for your time and obviously the thoughts that you have shared about human brain, the research that you are doing at this moment, and also the artificial intelligence, the prospect of it, and the threats that we are facing from it. And we hope that this is not the last interview that we are having. We are going to connect you again, and again, thank you for your time with us.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. দর্শক, আমরা শেষ করতে যাচ্ছি আজকের সুরক্ষায় প্রতিদিন অনুষ্ঠান। আমাদের সাথে যুক্ত হয়েছিলেন বিশ্বখ্যাত ব্রেন রিসার্চার প্রফেসর নিউটন হাওয়ার্ড যুক্তরাষ্ট্র থেকে। আমরা তার কাছ থেকে মানব মস্তিষ্কের বৈশিষ্ট্য এবং এ সংক্রান্ত যে আধুনিক গবেষণা সে সম্বন্ধে জেনেছি এবং বিশেষ করে কৃত্রিম বুদ্ধিমত্তা বা আর্টিফিশিয়াল ইন্টেলিজেন্স সম্বন্ধেও জেনেছি। তিনি যেই আশাবাদ ব্যক্ত করেছেন সেখানে অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ একটি বিষয় হচ্ছে কৃত্রিম বুদ্ধিমত্তা সম্বন্ধে আমাদের ভীত হওয়ার দরকার নেই, কিন্তু এটিকে কিভাবে সঠিকভাবে ব্যবহার করা যায় এবং বিশেষ করে আমাদের মস্তিষ্ককে কিভাবে আমরা ভালো রাখতে পারি সঠিক জীবনাচরণ এবং সঠিক খাদ্যাভ্যাসের মাধ্যমে, সেখানে তিনি গুরুত্ব দিয়েছেন। এবং তিনি শুধু গবেষণায় নন, আরও অন্যান্য কার্যক্রমের সাথে যুক্ত। আমরা তার কাছে কৃতজ্ঞ আজকে আমাদেরকে সময় দিয়েছেন, এবং আমরা প্রত্যেকে আমাদের মস্তিষ্ককে ভালো রাখার জন্য সর্বাত্মক চেষ্টা করব। এই আহ্বান রেখে আজকের মতো শেষ করছি আমাদের সুরক্ষায় প্রতিদিন।